Right, I am here today with Paul McCarthy, who's the author of The Fired Leader, Reinventing the Future of Leadership. There you go, there's his copy. And just as a quick intro to the series, in case you've been under a rock all this time, I am spending the summer interviewing the authors of all 18 Practical Inspiration Publishing titles shortlisted for the Business Book Awards this year. And it's been absolutely brilliant just chatting to each of them and just unearthing from them the story behind the book and also the reaction when they won. I'm particularly looking forward to asking you that, Paul. So I'm going to start by, well, welcoming you, obviously, but then just say, basically, why did you write this book?
Thank you, Alison. It's great, and I'm still quite in shock about the whole thing, actually, if I'm honest. But I think the reason I ultimately why I wrote this book was because my story, I was fired from 4 different senior leadership roles, and my role was to help develop leaders. So I could see what was coming on the trends of the future horizons about leadership development. And I just came up with this crazy hypothesis after my 4th firing, which was, I wonder if we're firing, marginalizing, discrediting the kinds of leaders who have the leadership qualities that we need to navigate ongoing disruption successfully. And that was it. And that was at the end, I think it was end of 2017. And so I started with that hypothesis. And then I spent a year or so doing a lot of research into the state of leadership today, and basically found a lot of different things. I love the word you used in the intro about unearthing, because what I used was a process just to unearth hypocrisy of leadership, ego-based leadership landmines, the ineffectiveness of leadership as an industry, the fact that no one's really talking about why leadership isn't working. And so I thought there's got to be a different way. And so that's why I started to write the book, because I want to have a conversation on a global scale, using my experience as the platform to then say, look what's happening in the world today, and why aren't we addressing this, and shouldn't we be addressing this? So that's why I kind of took on this, I wouldn't say poison chalice, but chalice over the last 5 years, because it's a significant boulder to move up a hill, or it has been in the last 3 or 4 years. But now it's getting to a point where this kind of movement has started and the train has left the station. So that's essentially why I wanted to write this book, because I was curious if the ones that we were marginalizing, getting rid of in organizations, were the ones that we needed. There are hidden gems to be able to help organizations be future ready and navigate disruption. So,
and one of the things that really struck me about the concept when you first pitched it to me, and comes across in the book as well, is that there's a real disconnect, isn't there? It's people think that they want these leaders, and you personally go in saying, this is the kind of leader I'm going to be, and everybody nods, and then and actually they don't want it at all. So there's a real sort of sense of, we know what we need, and that's how we think we're recruiting, but we can't tolerate it when it actually happens.
Yeah, truth tellers, disruptors, you can put whichever moniker you want on it, but essentially what I found in my process of being recruited, 6 to 9 interviews on average, by the way, each role that I was ultimately fired from, I found that the qualities that I had as a leader were welcomed and in fact assessed and evaluated during the recruitment process. And when it came time to actually demonstrate those qualities, that's what got me into trouble. So I would ultimately step on other people's toes, because I was asked my opinion about things in a senior leadership meeting, and for those listening to this, they'll be nodding along, because they exactly understand what I'm about to say. When the most senior person in the room asks you your opinion on a project or an idea or a perspective, you give your truthful, honest opinion, and you do it in a professional, courteous, forward-moving way. But ultimately, that's not what the organizations I worked for wanted. They wanted me to go along with the group thing. So, as I've said very often publicly, when the rest of the world of leadership is zigging, I'm zagging. Because if you ask me my honest opinion, I'm going to give you an honest answer, which is part of my overall, the way I operate as a leader, is to put the mission and the purpose of the organization above my own. So I was always thinking about, well, how do these ideas help the organization achieve its aims? But ultimately, when I did all of that, Alison, I stepped on ego-based leadership landmines. I exposed silos, politics, turf wars, and really started to get alienated in those organizations, to the extent that I didn't take it personally or wasn't bitter and twisted about it. I was just really curious about why this would happen, because you recruited me and you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and people's time and time away from client projects to interview me to demonstrate the qualities that you wanted to ultimately hire for. And then when I demonstrated them, I got marginalized personally. So yes, it became more like a quest, I think, to start to ask whether we were prepared for the future of leadership, and if not, why not, and why aren't we talking about it? So yeah, personal experience was perhaps one of the things that guided it to begin with.
Yes, and it's your starting point, and it is for most people who write books. It's the kind of, oh, this is interesting, this is happening to me, I notice this and so. But then obviously you do the deep work, you do the research, you talk to other people, and here it is. So I'm going to ask you another question: why should somebody read this book?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple, really, and I think the reason they should read it, and by the way, "should" is a word that I don't like to use, but
why does
if
this
you want,
matter? Let's use that. That's a better question.
yeah, it matters because the way we've done it up until now hasn't worked, and we're seeing many data points from the way that COVID decimated the workplace, the way that COVID reached out to us at a human level to say, look, we need to restructure the way we work. We need to approach organizational structure differently. That's 2 data points. The other data points are, look at the statistics about global disengagement, staff turnover, the cost to replace leaders that exit your organization. All of these cost billions and trillions each year. And so nothing's really being done about that. And the third thing is really probably the most shining of all for me, is because my work is geared at emerging leaders and future leaders. And it's very clear that future leaders, from all the data points, the research, the case studies that we've seen and that I've scoured through, they don't want to lead or be leaders like their predecessors have. They don't want to go into the system of being identified, recruited, onboarded, and developed using outdated systems, processes, and approaches. So we have to evolve the way we look at it from that perspective. So there's 3 or 4 data points, and that's why this book matters, because no other book, and because you've worked with me, and we got endorsements from Marshall Goldsmith, John Spence, Whitney Johnson, Gary Hamill, Gary Rich, and 45 others, right, of that ilk. None of them have seen a book like this before. And the irony is that the world needs a book like this at this time. And so for me, it goes against the learning and development industry. It goes against all the mantras that we've been taught up until now about learning and development, leadership development. And I think I joke in the book somewhere that the learning and development industry wanted my head on a spike, because I was the guy that exposed the 366 billion deficit in the way that we identify, recruit, onboard, and develop leaders. Why don't we talk about that? Well, this book talks about that, and it gives practical, here's how to address it in your organization, being aware of all sorts of nuances that organizations are characterized by, of course. So that's why it matters. And quite frankly, and then I'll be quiet, I wrote this book for the leader that isn't even born yet. I wrote this leader so that one day around the water cooler, my American accent there, even though I'm in the UK, the water cooler, one day around the water cooler, when a leader says, hey, have you been on that fired leadership course? It's really changed the way I approach leadership. How do I get onto it? Oh, there's a wait list. That's the world I see, a different approach to the cut and paste approach to leadership that we have today, quite simply. And so that's it.
Yeah, brilliant. And the most important question of all, how did you react when you found out that you'd been shortlisted?
Oh, my word. So I wrote this book for one person. If one person could do something differently about the way they approach leadership, then that was my metric of success. So far, about 6.5 million have some kind of awareness and access to it if they want. Not that they are yet, but it's out there. So when I say that because I came at your question with that mindset, because when I heard, we have an author Slack channel, obviously with PIP, and I looked at that, and I looked at the email, and I was like, really? And I looked again, and I was like, no, no one's going to read my book. I can't believe it. And maybe there's a little bit of my insecurity in there, but there was a trust thing, and I was trying to determine they must have made a mistake. My book's clearly not on there, is it? And then I waited till the next morning. Sure enough, it was there. It wasn't an error. I was expecting you, Alison, to say, sorry, Paul, we made a mistake. Unfortunately, sorry. It was still there. So yeah, absolute disbelief. And if I'm honest, as I said backstage with you, I'm still kind of processing it. And then obviously to be submitted for the Financial Times Book of the Year as well. All of the reasons why I wrote this book are suddenly coming to the fore, and it provides a different platform and scale to have some really cool conversations about why I really wrote the book, as I said earlier. So yeah, disbelief, shock, lack of trust, insecurity, all those things came up for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people that will resonate with them as well. But congratulations, it's true. I'm so excited it was shortlisted. It's a really brave book, and it's a really disruptive book. And I'm really proud of the Business Book Awards for shortlisting it for all of those reasons as well. So it's terrific. So good luck in September, and just brilliant to talk to you today. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thank you, Alison. I really appreciate the time, as ever.